once the war on terror started, there was massive improvements across everything, from weapon systems to communications and radios to intel gathering equipment to apparel.
Yeah.
And I started to see a lot of these improvements in apparel, specifically with special operations, that I thought that would be badass on a backcountry hunt. If you took that and you brought in a civilian hunting market, that would be really super handy, right? So that was happening.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Eberly Stock. Eberly Stock is one of my favorite backpacks. Now, I've been wearing their backpack for almost 20 years. They have lightweight backpacks. They have modular backpacks, everything from their main frame, which is just a frame pack that you can put bags on. They have these cool outside called bat wings that you can use. So check them out at eberlystock.com and make sure you tell them Ike sent you. Are you an outdoor enthusiast looking to support habitat conservation efforts in South Dakota? Look no further than the Hunt for Habitat raffle opportunity. This raffle was created in 2019 as part of Governor Newman's Second Century Initiative, and since then has raised over $1.4 million for habitat. And now, for 2024, the GFP Commission has modified the licenses offered through the Hunt for Habitat raffle package, giving you even more chances to score that hunt of a lifetime. Licenses are available, including the Custer State Park Trophy Bison, Deer, and Elk package. The best part, residents and non-residents alike can purchase raffle chances online without restriction on the number that can be purchased. Tickets are only $10 for residents and $20 for non-residents, making it affordable to support conservation and potentially win big. But hurry, tickets must be purchased online by July 11th, 2024 at 8 a.m. Central Time, and winners will be notified in the days following the close of the raffle. Don't miss out on your chance to support habitat, conservation, and potentially win an incredible hunting experience. Get your Hunt for Habitat tickets today. Available for sale in the Go Outdoors South Dakota system.
Let's get into who Butch really is. You grew up in Idaho.
Absolutely. Grew up on a ranch in southern Idaho. My family homesteaded in Rockland, Idaho, which is south of Pocatello, about 30 minutes. They homesteaded in the 1880s.
Wow.
And so my family's ranch, 7UD, under my great-grandfather was Farrell Nelson. It was his grandfather that actually homesteaded. He married my my great-grandmother, Farrell Nelson did, Taysom. She was the only child.
Okay.
So that ranch merged with the Nelson Ranch eventually. And yeah, I grew up, with 2,500 head of Hereford cattle and 90 head of horses, and that's
wow.
And hunting mule deer.
I was going to say, started hunting when? As soon as you could.
As early as I can remember. 2 years old, I was in hunting camps. They're super sacred. 2 weeks in October every year. I mean, it was what we did. My grandfather felt that mule deer there at that time, there's a bunch of elk there now, but there wasn't then. But mule deer were meant to fill the freezer.
Yeah.
And the beef was meant to go to market.
Yeah.
To sell.
Well, like 250 head of cattle.
2,500 head.
Oh, 20. I was like, 250 head of cow. You were poor as church mice.
No, 2,500.
Okay, 2,500. That sounds a lot better. Okay. Yeah. So you're eating venison, selling the beef to pay the bills.
Pay the bills. And so that was on my mom's side. On my dad's side, my grandfather was he was a first sergeant in the 82nd Airborne in World War II. So also an incredibly strong influence in my life, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I can remember one morning breaking ice with my grandfather on the ranch, and him looking at me and telling me, "Hey, Butch, you need to go do something else with your life. You don't want to be doing this for the rest of your life."
Yeah.
And my grandfather on my dad's side, was like, "You need to go in the military. You need to go in the military. And I want you to become an officer. You need to become an officer."
Right.
And so probably from the time I was about 4 years old is when I started to have that passion, that burning passion installed in me by both my grandfathers were extremely influential in my life. In fact, I didn't ever know my real dad for a number of years, and my grandfather on the ranching side was really like my real dad. And
was he so the 82nd Airborne, the military grandfather, was that your real dad's dad, or was this a stepdad's dad?
Stepdad came in later. So the end state with the whole thing is I had these ideas put into my head, and they became like what I was born to do. So I grew up, actually graduated from Nampa High, which is in the Boise Valley. It's not in the Rockland Valley. We ended up moving to that side of the state, but I would go back over to Rockland every summer, every hunting season, spend a ton of time there.
Yep.
And then I basically followed my grandfather's advice on my dad's side. I call him my dad now, obviously, but my dad's side, and he that you have to become an officer, and these are the paths you have to do that. So I went to Gonzaga University
because it was close to home.
Well, actually,
why, I always wondered why you didn't go to Boise.
You know what? That's a great question.
One that I don't have an answer to.
No, actually, I went to Norwich University in Vermont my freshman year.
Really?
Yeah, and the reason why was that they had an amazing ROTC package. I got an ROTC 4-year scholarship right out of the gate, so all my college is paid for. And the end state was they also had a really competitive rifle team, NCAA, and I was shooting competitively heavily at that point in time. And I'd won numerous Idaho State championships. I'd gone to the U.S. Olympic Training Center I think 3 or 4 times, maybe 4 times. Spent a lot of time there training and doing 3-position 22 50-meter small bore.
Okay.
And so I went to Norwich, and I was dating my now wife, Nikki. She was going to BSU, but the ROTC program at BSU sucked.
And I didn't know it was different. I thought it was the same.
No, each school has different packages.
I didn't know that.
So you can have an ROTC package, say for one university, and they're going to pay for all your room and board, and they're going to pay for all this stuff, right? And then another university might have, something that's nowhere near that. And Boise State at that time didn't really have this incredible package.
Huh.
But Nikki my wife was going to BSU. The idea was she was going to come out to Vermont and try to go to school out there in Burlington. Well, that's when we found out out-of-state tuition was ridiculous. Stupid. And so while I was at Norwich, I started to look at what university in the Northwest close to Boise has the best ROTC program. And Gonzaga had a baller ROTC program. It was intense, and it was dude, they were going to just put you on a pedestal and make you feel like a king and pay for everything.
Well, they have an Air Force base there, don't they?
They do. Yeah, in Spokane. But that's not connected to the university.
No, but.
So that's how I ended up at Gonzaga. That was the closest university to Boise that they had the number 1 ROTC program in the Northwest.
So we can really blame this on Nikki.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's funny.
And she's not here. She just left.
Yeah. I've known Nikki for a long time. But it's funny what we do for women, right? The only reason I went to the University of Wyoming is because my wife couldn't get a scholarship I wanted to go to CSU because they had a baller ag school.
Yeah.
But nope, she couldn't get a scholarship. So I went to University of Wyoming, and she went one semester and dropped out. I'm like, what the?
Yeah.
But
so we dated for 4 years before we got married. And this year it will be our 29-year anniversary.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's, that in my opinion, if you get into the 20s, you've really done something. We're 25. Candy and I are 25.
It's rare, man.
It is. It really is. And it seems like forever. But her and I were talking, sitting around last night, just talking, and I can't imagine doing it any other way. To me, is so important to have somebody that is by your side. You can say anything to,
that will forgive you.
Yes,
that will
all
have
of those
all
things.
The passion in the world.
All of those things.
Yeah,
all of them. And it's just amazing to me. 29 years. So did you guys date through college then?
We got married. So she graduated from BSU. I'm still going through. I'm a year behind her.
Okay.
Like our first.
She's older than you?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that whole thing started with
Cougar hunter.
Dude, I was epic. I was like the only guy at Nampa High School in Idaho that had a girlfriend in college. I took her to her senior prom. We hit it off, and she was graduating. I still had 1 year left.
Wow.
So, dude, I was like,
you're like
as
the
man. Big man on campus.
Now I know where you got your ego.
It started
your junior year.
Yeah, it started my junior year.
Oh, that's funny.
So we got married the year or the summer after she graduated and got her degree in radiology at BSU.
I didn't know she had a degree in radiology.
Yeah, she did.
Because I know she sells real estate now.
She does. That comes later on in life once we started to have kids. And she wanted to have flexibility to pick them up from school, drop them off. That's
why my wife's a real estate agent. 100% that way. Yeah. Because it's more flexible.
Dude, I could tell you a whole story on this. When she came home and told me, she's like, I want to become a real estate officer or a real estate agent. And I was like, why? That's like, what would you want to do that? You went to school for 4 years. You got this degree. Anytime we move from station to station in the military, she's already got a job. Yeah. All the hospitals want her. I'm like, why? So she says that to me. And I'm like, okay, I get that. Well, what's it going to cost? And her and I disagree on this, but I swear it was like $20,000.
Disagree on the story?
On the cost. I was like, she goes, oh, it's going to cost $20,000. She says, no, it wasn't. It was like $5,000, but bullcrap, whatever. All I know is she got her first listing. We were in Kansas, stationed at Fort Leavenworth at that time, and it was a farm. And so she got her first listing. She put it out, and she gets this phone call from this guy, and he's like super cranked and excited. He's like, I want to see this place. I want to buy it right now. Well, it turns out it was a hunter that was non-resident out of state. He's driving down this dirt road. This farm is in like northeast Kansas. Yeah. This giant like buck runs across the road in front of him, jumps the fence, and there's this for sale real estate sign right there. She closes the deal, and like her first commission check like paid for all the schooling. And I was like, oh, well, maybe there's something to this.
It's not $20,000.
Dude,
it was like $5,000.
Okay, so I want the receipts, Nikki. I think it was $20,000. Yeah, it might be. The bottom line was whatever the amount was, it was paid for it was on that first transaction. Yeah. So we ended up the year she got out of BSU. We got married that summer. She moved up to Spokane, and I still had. Actually, it took me 5 years to get my degree in mechanical engineering from Gonzaga.
Are you just slow or what?
No. What it was I had to do all the core curriculum that Gonzaga required. So you had
start over.
All these mandatory credits and like courses and classes that I had to go back and like catch up as a freshman, even though I was a sophomore.
I see.
And so there was no physical way to compress the mechanical engineering requirements and the core curriculum and requirements into 4 years when I came in.
Right.
And so I ended up doing another couple years to actually graduate.
Why? So you knew you were going to go to the military because you signed the ROTC,
yeah.
Right? Why mechanical engineering?
You know, I was fascinated with like developing, creating things, making things. And still am not as good as I was then, but like math just came supernatural to me. I was really good at like just science-based, disciplines. And so it just was like a natural deal, but I actually enjoyed the hell out of it. And so like, for example, my senior year at Gonzaga University, my senior design project was with High Country Archery. And
I remember them.
And I designed them 2 new bows and a whole bunch of cams, and that was what I spent it was the best year of my college experience.
What did your university think about you building a weapon?
At that time they loved it. It was awesome. So I took the whole basement of the engineering building and turned it into an archery range. I had myself, one other mechanical engineer, and 3 civil engineers were a part of a 5-man team. And it was the funnest year of my college existence.
I'll bet. Just down there tinkering with.
And I was leaving like every Thursday I would go to a 3D archery shoot under the pretense of field testing and turn in my gas receipts and get a check back from the university. It was cool as hell, man.
Oh, wow.
And so at the same time, I was also palling around with Dan Evans from Trophy Taker.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, so Trophy Taker obviously wasn't in existence then, but
who single-handedly revolutionized the archery industry.
Well, listen to the rest of this deal on that was that we were doing a ton of shoots and stuff with a guy named Glenn Barry Best Game Calls.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so,
man, you're taking me back. Well, we're damn near the same age. You're taking me back to.
So we were taking an NAP 3D Platinum Premiere, and they would make these fall-away rests. Like there was fall-away rests that were just basically adjusting and modifying an existing, fixed rest. And the end state with it was when Dan basically started Trophy Takers, right about when I was going into U.S. Army Flight School. I got selected to go into U.S. Army Rotary Wing Flight School. And the bottom line is the bow I designed for High Country in 2000 was the bow of the year. And Dan's Shaky Hunter fall-away rest that came out was the archery product of the year that year.
I remember that year.
And so like a lot of my backstory on that was when I would be deployed after 9/11, especially, and get a care package. And I would open up these hunting magazines, many times always were Eastmans.
Yeah.
But, some others, like even a Cabela's catalog, here was Dan Evans with Trophy Taker Air Arrests.
Right.
And so I was like, if Dan can do that, I can do that.
If he can build a company, so can I.
So could I.
And the dream was born.
And that started it. And then, ultimately I always thought I was going to circle full back around and it was going to be something, archery related. But the end state with it is at that point, the owner of High Country was a guy named Spencer Landy, always kept in touch with Nikki when I was gone and deployed. He really wanted, me to come to High Country, but I was flying helicopters and I was having the absolute time from life. I honestly, number one, when I got selected for Army Aviation, that was like, dude, this is amazing.
Made it.
This is amazing. But then once I actually got into U.S. Army Flight School, I was like, I can remember coming home and saying, I cannot believe I'm getting paid to do this. I mean, flight school was an absolute blast. 18 months. It was like I'd won a new life.
Yeah.
And I was like, I cannot believe that this is the life. I'm so blessed, right? I cannot believe that. And at that point, I didn't care anything about these aspirations for developing new products or these aspirations for, the archery industry, any of that. I was just having such a good time. And when that was all coming together, when you're in a U.S. Army Flight School, they have an order of merit list, and how you get selected for what platform you're going to fly is based off that OML. And so if you're number one in your class and they've got 3 Apache slots, they ask you, what do you want to fly? I want to fly an Apache. Okay, boom, filled. Okay, filled. If you're number 5 and you say, I want to fly an Apache attack helicopter, and they go, oh, we're sorry, you have to choose either a Black Hawk, a Chinook, or whatever's available. And so that was the next big monumental aspect, because the aircraft is super crazy sexy, but it was more about the mission for me. Basically, I had such a passion for hunting.
Do you want to be a bus driver or do you want to be the cop? Right?
Do you want to hunt on the battlefield, or do you want to supply beans and bullets for the guys that are hunting on the battlefield?
Right.
Yeah. Most lethal weapons platform at that time in the U.S. Army arsenal. And so once I was selected for Apache attack helicopters, now I was like, oh, my life's epic.
I'm good.
My life is good. Yeah.
That is crazy.
So from there, my first duty assignment was to Camp Humphreys, Korea. I can remember.
Because this is after 9/11, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, it's leading up to it. This is 97.
Okay.
97, 98 timeframe. But I can remember coming down on my orders. I got my orders and I came home, and Korea at that time was like the place to be, because that's where all the revenue, all the money was for flight hours, and also ordnance and shooting and training and all that. That was the best place to go, as long as, if you wanted to build flight time and if you wanted to get a lot of experience. They were well funded. Right?
Where were you guys living that time?
We were at Fort Rucker, Alabama. What used to be Fort Rucker, Alabama, until this woke Biden
changed it to
if it had a Civil War name, it's now called Fort Navasil.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody still calls it Mother Rucker, but it's just disappointing, incredibly disappointing. So I can remember coming home and I said, hey, I got our first duty assignment, and I had this like surreal moment with Nikki, because it was supposed to be unaccompanied, meaning she couldn't come with me.
Right.
For 1 year. It turned out that I was able to bring her, but I had to live off post. I couldn't have her on post. So we lived in a village called Anjani.
You're kidding me.
No. We
Two
lived
white folk in the village.
We were there were some other white folk, but we were so Nikki, our like real first duty assignment, we were living on the local economy in Anjani in a place called the Rainbow Apartment Complex, because it was every color that you can imagine. And it ended up being more than a year. It ended up being 2 years. I extended 4 times.
Wow.
Because there was always something that was epic that I needed to be there for. And she got pregnant with my oldest daughter, McKenna, while we were in Korea. And as she kind of progressed through that, she became extremely, easy to get sick to the smells. And the smells are incredibly strong.
Yeah.
With kimchi and, all these things. And when I came home and told her I was going to extend one more time, because there's this massive gunnery with like unlimited ordnance, right? That needed to be shot. I needed to extend. And actually my commander asked me to extend. She literally is like, I'm going home. I'll see you when you get home. And
you're kidding me.
No. And she would have to hold her breath. We lived on the 8th floor of that apartment complex, and she would get in the elevator with the locals, the Koreans, and she literally had to hold her breath because she was so sensitive being pregnant to the smell. She couldn't handle it.
Oh my gosh.
So it's kind of a funny thing. I tell McKenna she's got a little stamp on her butt that says "Made in Korea." Yeah.
Made in Korea.
That's right.
Yeah. And you don't like smells.
Dude, one of the most traumatizing things about that time, and you'll have to ask Nikki about this. We had a dog farm that was right behind our apartment complex. And when somebody was going to come and purchase a dog, they would bring it out on a leash, and there was like some power lines that ran through that property, and they would basically lasso up on that telephone pole, and they had this big long cane pole, and they would just beat those dogs for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So supposedly because it tenderized the meat. And Nikki had to live through a lot of those experiences happening.
Because they were eating them?
They eat them, yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's like a delicacy. From what I understand, that was a leftover from World War II when Japan was in Korea, and basically they needed to eat something. And so, I don't know. At some point, dog is a delicacy in Korea.
Did you ever try it?
Not that I know of. Not on purpose. Not that I wanted to try it.
Yeah. I never ordered it off the menu. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That I know of.
Yeah. Not that I know of.
Jeez. So
that was a traumatizing part of
So did she come home and you stay, or did you both leave?
So I was extending in 3-month blocks, I think. And so I had to take part in this massive, crazy, awesome gunnery. And
when you say gunnery for the audience, what does that mean?
So a gunnery for us was basically going to a designated range area. In this case, it was this island called Chigdo Island. We would rearm, refuel in Osan, which is an Air Force base. And then we would fly out over the ocean and basically shoot targets on this island. And all the engagements are all recorded on gun tape. And then you would bring all those back to the master gunner. They were all evaluated. So it's a scored. Imagine like NRL hunter match today, or like PRS or a 3D archery range, except the scoring all takes place from your gun tape, and you're being evaluated on every aspect of your engagement with the weapons platform in the scenarios that you're asked to be, to engage in.
That's the gunnery. Cool. So you're like, I am not going home and missing this opportunity. It was to like get tons and tons of flight time, gunnery time.
And really it was also tons and tons of hellfire time. So the allocation of hellfires, I don't know like why it was, if it was like an expiration on the lot or whatever, but it was like, hey, we're going to go shoot like 1,000 hellfires with the squadron.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was like,
I can't go home.
I can't miss that. That's ridiculous. So I stay here and I tough this out I can remember at the end of that gunnery though, loading up on a Blackhawk and flying back and basically thinking like, hey, I'm packing my shit and I'm going to see my wife. So,
So did you miss the birth? No, because it was 3 months. So.
I didn't miss either of my daughters when they were born. Thank God.
Yeah.
But I did miss shortly thereafter. So I went from that unit to the 101st. I was in the 101st when 9/11 happened. And that's when I started to miss a lot of things.
Yeah. Everything changed.
Everything changed. Wow. Everything changed.
So come home from Korea. 9/11 happens.
9/11 happened.
Did you go to Iraq? Did you go to Afghanistan immediately?
Went to Afghanistan.
You did.
Yeah, we went. I was hunting in Idaho. I was on leave. I can still remember every aspect of it when 9/11 happened. And it took me 5 days to get back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And once I got back, the entire installation had changed. Like at that time, you could drive on post, off post. You didn't have to go through all these ID checks, do all these things. When I finally got home and I was going in to check in with my unit, they had just basically deployed all the infantry to all of the entry points into Campbell. They were like full up bunkered sandbags, squad served weapons. Like it was like, holy shit.
This changed overnight.
It changed a lot. And so at that time, I was the attack aviation liaison officer to the 3rd Brigade combat team in the 101st. And that is a position that is a position of great importance, because basically if you get attached to the infantry brigade, you're the subject matter expert in attack aviation, and you're his right-hand man, how to best deploy his attack aviation. Up into that one, I got a 2nd platoon. I was a platoon leader in Korea. I got a 2nd platoon, which was another great honor to get 2 swings at that.
No kidding.
And then I was selected to be the attack aviation Illinois, the 3rd Brigade combat team. And it just so happened that they were the number 1 brigade combat team that was up for basically QRF, quick reaction force, to go and respond. So all these brigades, these brigade combat teams, they cycle through like, so you're on deployment, which means like you got to be available to be back home if you get a phone call in like a few hours, to the guys that are like coming up, they know it, they're getting ready, they're training, to the guys that are like, okay, we're going on leave, we're taking time off, we can go, do these things. So I just happened to be attached to the guys that were first up. So
so if something happens, they're calling you in, and you're making huge decisions, helping him make huge decisions. And wow.
So
that's crazy.
So we actually spent like 3 months, September, October, and November, doing nothing but what's called a CALFAX, a combined arms live fire exercises. So we were that whole time doing nothing but additional gunneries, but these gunneries included artillery, Air Force, they were combined arms, engagements. And we're basically getting ready to go into Afghanistan. The Marines were working on and had just seized Kandahar, the 2nd MU. And so basically after the Marines seized Kandahar, the 101st came in. And I was a part of the 10-man team that was the Advon, the advanced party from the 101st that came from Fort Campbell to Kandahar. So I am very confident I was the very first Apache pilot in Afghanistan, right after 9/11.
How did they? This is a weird question, but I've often thought of this. How did they get those helicopters over there so fast?
They break them down, the blades you fold back,
right,
and they loaded them on C5s.
Really?
Yeah, and they stack them in there like they're
cordwood.
They're literally like
not touching, but damn
millimeters from touching each other. Boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I went in, we didn't have the aircraft yet. I can't remember exactly how many weeks I was there, but I was there, maybe 3 weeks before the aircraft started to show up. And the aircraft were all staged. They're back at Campbell, and the C5s are coming in, and they started to load them and bring them. But what a cool experience is I got to fly a Super Cobra and with the Marines in preparation of the 101st coming in.
What is a Super Cobra?
It's what the Marines use. It's their It's a Super Cobra as their attack aircraft.
Yeah.
And so it was a really neat experience, I guess. And it was an easy sign off because a Cobra is actually a single pilot aircraft, whereas like an Apache's, you have to have both dual, and it takes like a general officer to sign off somebody that's not rated for an Apache to fly an Apache. Well, that squadron commander was able to sign off because I was an aviator, and it was an easy deal. And so I got to get some flight time in the Cobras, and I also got to see the area of operations, go out and see where guys were training, doing gunneries, doing some things like that. And then when our aircraft came in, I was much more familiar with the local area, and I was able to basically integrate right away.
So how many attack helicopter or how many Apaches did you have underneath?
We started off with 8. It was an abortion, really. They tried to mirror the same number of platforms that the Marine Corps had. And so they were matching, like, I don't know the exact numbers. It was called Task Force Talon. And so if the Marine Corps had like 8 CH-53 Sea Stallions, then they put 8 Chinooks. And if they had 8 Cobras, then they said, okay, we need 8 Apaches. And if there was 8 Hueys, then they said, okay, we need 8 Blackhawks. And so they hodgepodge this very small unit together. And
you guys weren't flying together though, were you?
They were working together all the time, doing missions together all the time, but not with the Marines. But they're trying to keep the number of deployed assets super small and match. If the Marines were able to go do what they were doing, then we needed to pare down and basically try to emulate the footprint and the number of units. And so this Task Force Talon was formed. It was a bad idea though, because logistically it takes the same number of maintainers and all the equipment to maintain 8 Apaches or to maintain 24.
Right.
So the whole battalion should have went out of the gate. So fast forward through that whole time, there was a first huge battle called Operation Anaconda. A lot of aircraft got shot up. Every AH-64 that was in the fight got shot up. The commander at that time actually took a round in the face during the fight. And when that happened, the rest of the battalion was immediately activated, and they brought all the rest of the Apaches over. So we ended up having all 24.
Right.
But we had to go through all this bureaucracy, out of the gate.
So you had 24 guys underneath you.
No. At that time, I didn't have any guys underneath me. I was attached to the infantry as the attack aviation planner.
Okay.
Yeah. And we started off.
This isn't when you had the platoon.
No, I wasn't in command yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I commanded Renegade Troop 4-3 ACR Armored Cavalry Regiment out of Fort Carson, Colorado, and that was actually in Iraq.
Okay.
So I commanded and fought my unit in Iraq. This was leading up to that. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to get into it too far because I've heard some of these stories, but you've had some pretty hairy shit go on in your helicopter career.
I've had some experiences.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I've heard of one where you crashed.
You could call that.
Yeah. Without getting into too many details. Actually, let's go the other way. What was the funnest thing you did over there?
over there meaning in
the Middle East.
In
I don't
the
care if
Middle
it's
East.
Iraq or Afghanistan.
Because
you spent time in both, right?
Yeah.
Lots of time.
Lots of time.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Silencer Central. Silencer Central, thank you for supporting us. If you would like to support Silencer Central, if you have any interest in a silencer, which I encourage because it is a game changer in the field, check out silencercentral.com. They will walk you through the paperwork online, as well as they can ship that silencer directly to your doorstep. So check them out and tell them Ike sent you.
So by far the most rewarding aspect was, and the greatest honor I'll go to my grave with, is leading American soldiers in combat. Right, that's an incredible responsibility that you can't really comprehend or understand unless you've done in combat, especially. But the funnest, to answer your question, the funnest thing that I have done, which is also incredibly unique and very special, was I'm going back and forth between Afghanistan and Iraq, just putting it into one bucket and calling it deployed to third world shitholes. Okay, is that I air assaulted into Tora Bora as an Apache pilot on the ground.
Wow.
So this was just a calamity of like events. But when I was the attack aviation LNO to the 3rd BCT, we had a battalion out of Canada that was attached to the American 101st out of Edmonton. The 3PP CLI, and they had a platoon of spelunkers somewhere in that battalion. And basically we went into Tora Bora because they knew they were going to go into Tora Bora. That's the reason why they were picked, is because that skill set that unit had. And they wanted to go in and exploit the caves that had been J-dammed basically when our U.S. Special Operations was fighting with Northern Alliance guys. And there's a film out and books out called Horse Soldiers. There's actually horse soldier whiskey, right?
Right.
Those guys that went in really super early, and then they were basically
great movie.
Those guys are great guys, right? So the bottom line is, just leading up to that, one night in Kandahar, there was a U.S. Guard pilot that dropped a 500-pound JDAM into our FOB, our forward operating base, when the Canadians were doing a night live fire exercise. They were shooting all these old Soviet vehicles, and the tracer rounds were hitting the vehicles and bouncing up into the air. And when this pilot flew over, he thought he was taking ground fire, and he never cleared it. And he basically just dropped where he thought he was taking the ground fire from, and he dropped it onto this night live fire exercise the Canadians were doing. It ended up killing, I think, 4 of them, and it ended up messing them up. And the bottom line is that time Rumsfeld was a Secretary of Defense, and he had a bat phone to Colonel Rosinski at that time, and he said, you can't afford to have another fratricide with the Canadians, because if you have one, the Canadian Parliament's going to pull the Canadians out of the effort here. So one of the control measures we had when the Canadians were going into Tora Bora is they were going to have 24-hour Apaches overhead the entire time, but the Canadians had never done any training with the Apache unit. So we do what's called a close combat attack, which is really unique compared to the Air Force. The Air Force has to go through a JTAC. He's talking to the plane. The JTAC's then talking to the ground commander. Everything has to go through him. In the Army, the Apache crew is talking to whomever is on the ground, whether he's an E3, an E5, an 06, it doesn't matter. And so that they deconflict and coordinate the fires. Well, the Canadians had never done that. So out of that fratricide that had happened in that JDAM, Colonel Rosinski turned to my battalion commander and said, I'm going to send Butch in to Tora Bora with the Canadians. And so I air assaulted into Tora Bora and ran around in Tora Bora for 2 weeks with the Canadians, and everywhere that Canadian battalion commander went, I went.
Wow.
So I'm pretty sure I'm the only Apache pilot that's ever been on the ground running around in Tora Bora.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's
pretty cool.
Awesome. That's cool. So the military, all while doing the military, I know I've heard this story about every time we get in the spirit world, but all while in the military, you're dreaming about hunting. You're dreaming about
always
being back and doing the things that you've done since you were
never stopped
2.
thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like when I had downtime, really I was living vicariously through Eastman's Hunting Journal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you've internalized how important that was to me. But every time a new Eastman's Hunting Journal came out, I was sure to get that in a care package.
Yeah.
And that's what I did in my free time.
Yeah.
When I was not, doing what I needed to be doing when I wasn't in free time.
So when my dad did tour, my dad did 2 tours in Vietnam, and he did the same thing. I mean, his mom would send him Outdoor Life and Field and Stream, and he'd read each issue so many times he'd wear them out. He couldn't read them anymore. Paper
I was the same
trashed.
way. And my wife also would send me Ziploc baggie with sagebrush.
Just so you could smell it.
Just so I could smell it. And I would open it up and basically daydream about, being home.
Yeah.
Being in the backcountry on opening morning of hunting season. I had engagements that I conducted, and it would be like opening day of hunting season in Idaho, and I knew it. And there was usually at night. We fought a lot at night, but I can remember basically announcing on the gun tape, like whacking a target and going, "That's for missing another day of hunting, opening day of hunting season."
That's awesome. So this is where. So let's get back. Let's get into why you started Kryptek. I mean, what was the driving force, and why clothing? Why gear? Why not? You had a bow, yeah.
Bows.
Why not go back into that, or why not come back and work for Dan Evans and building?
Yeah, there could have been a lot of different ways to go about it. One of the things that was kind of a driving factor. Well, first of all, I'll answer apparel. Okay. So once the war on terror started, there was massive improvements across everything, from weapon systems to communications and radios to intel gathering equipment to apparel.
Yeah.
And I started to see a lot of these improvements in apparel, specifically with special operations, that I thought that would be badass on a backcountry hunt. If you took that and you brought in the civilian hunting market, that would be really super handy, right? So that was happening. At the same time, when I was looking, I just wanted to be in the outdoor industry in general. It didn't have to like necessarily be what Kryptek's known for today, or archery related,
right?
Or anything. It's just like the thought was, how cool would it be, what I called at that time a lifestyle by design, where I got to go hunt, I could go fishing, do this, but I got to go hunt, and I was making some revenue, and I could still support my family.
Right.
And I was looking at everything, dude. I tried to buy a guiding operation in the Frank Church Wilderness from Tal Afar, Iraq, via email. My wife flew in from McCall to Sulphur Creek Ranch in the middle of the winter on skis to look at an opportunity that was open at that time.
Really?
And I had done all the math on how many tags were allocated, what you could generate in revenue, how you'd break even. And there was a well-off dentist at that point in Boise, Idaho, that owned that place. And I tried to broker with him to basically carry the note. And he had some other opportunities, and he's dealing with this guy that's like, not even in town.
Right.
And he had somebody was there ready to stroke a check. But I mean, I was looking at that, and I think about that. Like, if that guy had said yes, I'd be Butch Whiting, the outfitter, in the Frank Church right now, that has super cool fly-in, backcountry hunts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was about. It really was as simple as that. And the apparel aspect of it, Claycorn, who was at that time one of my junior warrant officers, he was at that time they called him Hollywood. He was very much like a Gucci guy almost, right? Like he was the one that was like recognized, like, hey dude, check out this new knee system that these guys are using. Can you imagine if this in hunting? Look at this waist system. Can you imagine that?
Did he hunt then?
Yeah, he was always
because he was
hunter.
from Texas, right?
He was, but it wasn't like expeditionary type hunts, backcountry type hunts. Right. Different place in the U.S.
Right.
But that's kind of like where, well, that's interesting, and yeah, maybe. And so basically it got formed into a business plan, a business model. And we just had massive breaks that pulled us into this direction,
into the clothing side,
into the clothing and into the camo development. Miraculous stuff. And so I didn't care if it was anything at all, is if it was hunting related.
right?
That's all that mattered.
Hunting related, and you can support your fan.
And that's it.
That's awesome. So it's come a long ways. I mean, you guys are making a lot of gear, a lot of really good gear.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we use it is because it's good gear, and we're like-minded. We've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
We're like-minded, God-fearing patriots.
That love America.
Yep, I love America, and
they can't stand what's happened under our current administration.
yes, 100%. And so, what's the future look like? What's next?
I'm excited about where we're at right now because the last 10 years has been what I would consider a hobby, and not knowing what we didn't know.
Right.
And it's been a painful education in some aspects. There's been a lot of really big wins and great things, but I've got a fantastic team. I've got a great crew. We're going to be very purpose driven with regards to where we're developing new product, what we're coming out with, and basically turn the volume up on the essence of the brand and what we stand for. At the same time, come out with just incredibly like the best product that's on the market.
Yeah, and I've got a little bit of taste of what's coming down the pipe, and I am super excited for it. I mean, not piece specific, but how you guys are gonna go about it, and I'm super excited. And to be involved at the level that we're going to be involved in.
Well, you guys are heavily involved in it because it's feedback, it's input, it's constant
It's
field
like, hey,
testing.
this zipper needs to be moved over here.
Yeah, and that's the type of like customer relationship we want to have.
Yeah.
We want our customers to be a part of our team.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what you guys are doing. So, man, it's fun to have the partnership. It's fun to have a friendship. We were friends long before we were partners.
We absolutely were.
We had a lot of fun together.
We've had, Western lifestyle is a big part of both of our lives.
Yeah.
And that's, been another connection that we've shared.
100%. So I ask my guests 3 things, and I appreciate you coming on and telling your story and sharing with an audience, who's Butch Whiting and why they should care about Kryptek, and that's why. I mean, you're not only building badass gear, you're using badass gear, and you've done some badass things in your life.
Yeah, I've been very blessed to experience a lot of epic adventure. That's for sure.
So 3 questions. First one is, if you're, God willing, you're on a deathbed and you don't get hit by a truck, it's instant. What are you going to be thinking about?
On my deathbed, what am I going to be thinking about? Well, first I'm going to be thinking about I'm going to be going to heaven because I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus Christ, Lord and Savior.
Yep.
But I'm also probably going to be thinking about how proud I am of my daughters and what they are doing with their lives and the foundation that I was a part of helping establish with Nikki.
Yep.
So
yeah, you have one that's going to med school.
She's got accepted into med school already in Idaho, ICOM, and she was down selected for the University of Washington. She just took her oral exams here this week, and I'm sure she did extremely well. But she's definitely,
it's awesome.
She's definitely going to med school.
And your youngest is graduating this spring.
I think it's either this spring or she might have one more fall semester. But either way, she's still like 2 years ahead of all of her classmates.
Yeah, I looked at her yesterday when she's here. Yeah, or she was here. I looked at her yesterday. She's like, yeah, I think she said this spring, but I was like, you've only been in college a year, 2 or something, right?
Yep.
And she goes, no, I graduated high school with an associate's degree.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a step ahead. Can you imagine getting 2 years when you were that age?
Idaho is so cool with that. If the kids are self-motivated, the state pays for their college credits.
Yeah, that's how
and
Wyoming
so
is.
her, like junior year and senior year, she's taking all these classes at BSU.
Yeah.
So that's probably the thing I'm most proud about that I've been able to like express and build into my girls is their work ethic.
Yeah.
They've got like an incredible work ethic. And that, in my opinion, is more important in life than anything else.
Yeah. 100%.
Is your work ethic. You might be faster, you might be better, you might be more financed, but you're not going to outwork me at any place.
Yeah.
And so in both cases, both of the girls have internalized that, and I'm incredibly proud of that. And I know that that's going to be a family legacy that's going to get passed down. You know, no matter how successful Kryptek is, they were there and they saw it when it like was just an idea. They know, they lived and spent time in the house I grew up in and the house that Nikki grew up in, and they know where we came from, which was nothing.
Yeah.
And where we got to where we're at was by work ethic. Nobody handed us anything. We didn't get a silver spoon jammed in our asshole.
Right.
We worked for it. And so I'm that's the proudest thing I have with regards to my kids.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why do you hunt?
Why do we breathe air? That's who we. That's what we're created to hunt. But for me personally, it comes back to the family culture of hunting. Like I was saying earlier, growing up, that was the center of gravity for my family. I can't imagine life without. I don't know. Like I don't know what else we would have done. It was that family community aspect of it, plus filling the freezer.
Right.
But it's the culture of hunting and the community around that and the experiences that you're able to develop with family and friends is priceless.
Yeah.
And the best hunts that I have ever been on, and I've killed some really big shit.
Yeah.
Has not been those hunts. The best hunts that I have done is where I wasn't pulling the trigger. I was with my daughters or I was with my wife and I was mentoring them and I was helping them. And I'm excited to be able to help once we have grandchildren, the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife says I hoard knives. And the really is, I'm like, no, those are for my grandchildren. And the girls, they get pissed off. They're like, well, what about us? I'm like, no, that's for the grandchildren. And the same with guns. I hoard guns because I want to pass those down. And it's not just those physical things. It's the lifestyle and all of it that comes with it. And that's the reason why we have to be such extreme stewards when it comes to conservation to ensure those opportunities are there for generations to come for the rest of many generations, many
100%.
many generations.
100%. My mom says this all the time. She had kids to have grandkids. She didn't like the kid thing. She wants the grandkids.
Yeah.
So
well.
So the last question, if you have the ability, or if you had the ability to do a TED Talk, and you know what a TED Talk is for the audience, it's a roughly 4-minute conversation, or under 10 minutes, I think is what they say, conversation or speech that you're passionate about, something, and you're educated about. What would you do a TED Talk on? I've heard you speak, and it is you do a really good job. I heard you in Dallas. You did a really good job.
That's an exceptional question, because I think that you have to ask another question back to you. Is if you're doing a TED Talk, which if I recall correctly, it's like 6 minutes, right? Limited to 6 minutes. Who is in the audience that you're giving the TED Talk to?
I would say people that are interested in whatever you're talking about.
So they're like-minded.
Yes.
Okay. Because if they're not,
I would say if you did a TED Talk to this crowd.
To this crowd.
Yeah,
okay.
To the hunting expo crowd.
Okay. Well, that's a better way to frame it.
That's a great way. I've never had that question, but you're right. The audience does matter.
Absolutely.
100%.
So if you have a window of opportunity to speak to like-minded individuals, that 6-minute TED Talk would be about how important it is to be patriotic, meaning pro-Constitution, pro-Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment, to not bend to your values, to not bend to the censorship, the communist parties of Zuckerberg, all this shit that we have to deal with, shadow banning, and know that this lifestyle that we have, that all these people here are enjoying, is under scrutiny and attack by an extremely sophisticated and extremely well-funded group of individuals that stand against everything that we love so much.
Yes.
And with regards to that, is in the industry, it's still shocking to me when you have brands that have woke views, and you have the right, and you need to know where those brands stand and how they're deploying their dollars and where they're putting it back into the community and conservation. Really, conservation is a massive part of this. It's a huge part of it. And so put your dollars into brands that stand for the same beliefs that you have. And if they don't have those same beliefs, then don't tolerate them.
Yeah. And for God's sakes, don't fund them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I have the luxury. I've had numerous private equity, family offices, so on, kick tires, bang on the doors. We're still privately owned.
Yeah.
We're veteran founded. We're veteran owned. 50% of my company are veterans. I don't have a private equity group that is using me as a political weapon.
Right.
And it's going to require.
You're alluding that others do.
They absolutely do.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
And I don't need to sit here and bash the brands and bash what those groups are and what they are. And I've got to educate my own friends on certain things. It's not like evident, but wake the fuck up.
Yeah. 100%.
Wake the fuck up. The pendulum, I feel, is swinging right now back from all this critical race theory, woke bullshit, back into like, hey, conservative American values. This is the American way of life.
Yeah. And you're not going to do that in my town.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't do it on my watch. And
Yeah.
so that's what my TED Talk would be about. Of course, I'd rehearse it and I'd have it written out, and I wouldn't just be on the fly.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking subject matter, not the actual TED Talk.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate our friendship.
Yeah.
We've had some really deep talks over the years.
Well, I appreciate the hell out of you and your family.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Everything that you guys stand for.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do this again.
Absolutely. Let's do it around a campfire.
Yeah, now you're talking.
Backcountry.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.